Okay, so picking up again with the fifth meditation, um, we are back to thinking about the external world and our judgment of bodies in the external world. So, right, what can I know about my experience using my judgment correctly? Right? What in the empirical world, the world of experience, provides me with that kind of great light, right? The natural light that will compel my will to judge it correctly, make me understand the truth. Uh, so we start by examining our ideas. What is clear and what is not? And we saw sort of prelude to this argument in the discussion about dreams. Remember in the first meditation, when Descartes is giving his reasons for doubting, he is talking about dreams, and the argument from dreams uh, has one of the points in that section about dreams is even in dreams, there are certain things that seem to be beyond my control, beyond my power, that are not my invention. And he names mathematical truths and abstract qualities, abstract attributes like um, color, shape, etc. Right? Things that I'm not able to change. So the building blocks of experience. So the states of affairs, the actions that are happening in the dream, all of those are dubious. But the components that make up that experience, the colors, the mathematical, geometrical shapes, uh, are all the same in dreams as in waking life, and they seem to be immutable, beyond my control, not dependent on me, right? Independent of me. And in the fifth meditation, Descartes returns to this argument, right? Thinking about what is it in reality that I know by the natural light, right? That I about which there is a great light in the intellect. And the first example of this is mathematics. Right? He says there are certain experiences like the experience of thinking about a triangle or my knowledge of a triangle that are clearly not derived from my own mind. I cannot will it, or I can't will that a triangle, for example, have four sides, or that the angles of a right triangle should add up to anything but 180 degrees. So this means that the truth of mathematics and mathematical ideas, perceptions of mathematical objects, appear to be certain. Right? Uh, he writes on page 64, when, for example, I imagine a triangle, even if perhaps no such figure exists or has ever existed anywhere outside my thought, there is still a determinate nature or essence or form of the triangle, which is immutable and eternal and not invented by me or dependent on my mind. This is clear from the fact that various properties can be demonstrated of the triangle. For example, there's three angles equal two right angles, and its greatest side subtends its greatest angle. Right. So, um, what is important about this is that these things can be demonstrated. uh, that there is kind of empirical experience that, well, empirical slash logical experience that uh, is immutable and eternal. Right? Whether or not there is such a thing as a triangle in the external world outside of my mind is immaterial, because even if there isn't a real triangle outside of my mind, the triangle that I have in my mind is still an object of a kind, an intellectual object, that is not of my creation. And I know that because it has its own essence, it has its own nature. And that nature is not only unchangeable by me, immutable, but it is demonstrable. It can be shown, it shows itself, even in the mind. So if I just think about triangularity, what a triangle is, without ever seeing one in the real world, I will be able to understand its essence, right? What makes it a triangle? It has three sides. That it's, if it's a right triangle, its angles always add up to 180 degrees. Things like this, right? Its longest side subtends its greatest angle. Um, and what that means is that it is an object that exists independently of me, uh, even if not in any kind of physical form. There is a world that is not of my making. Not only does God exist, but triangles exist. Triangles have their own nature. And this is part of the essence of a triangle. So remember, at the end of the second meditation, Descartes is talking about substance. And he's talking about the difficulty. Remember, this is the example of the wax. The wax is hard, smells of flowers, and is bright yellow. And then the wax melts, loses its smell, becomes a liquid, etc. Right? Everything about the wax changes. So where is the wax? Where is the substance of the wax? Where is the essence of the wax? What makes the wax the wax? And we couldn't find anything except the intellectual object of the wax. The idea of the wax is the substance and essence of the wax, nothing physical. So the mind judges that the wax is the wax. The mind alone grasps the essence of the wax. And that's roughly what this idea of the triangle is about also, that the essence is grasped intellectually. We understand the essence regardless of whether we see it or not. So the essence is intellectually legible. It is only grasped through the mind. And this is, important for a number of reasons. First of all, because it's evidence of discrete essences, right? Discrete individuals, discrete bodies or entities that are independent of me. But it's also important because it sets up a new way of thinking about this classic philosophical distinction between essence and accident. The essence of a thing and then the contingent manifestations of that thing. So the essence of a person is their soul in classical philosophy. And that soul remains the same obtains throughout all the changes in the physicality of that thing. So, right, my essence is my soul. The fact that I have white skin and red hair, that I'm wearing a blue shirt, that I am 37 years old, etc. These are all accidents of my being in the sense that they are not essential to my being. They aren't contained within my essence. So in the similar way, we'd say the attributes of the wax are contingent, accidental. They don't express the essence of the wax. Uh, so the essence is this intellectual thing. Uh, and we'd say what is essential is that which remains through changes. So the triangle has a certain essence. It has three sides. Its angles, we'll say the right triangle has an essence. It's three sides. Its angles equal 180 degrees. Now, maybe that triangle, that right triangle, is drawn small. Maybe it's drawn very large. Maybe it is positioned so that its longest side is on the bottom. Maybe it's positioned so its longest side is on the top or to the left. These are all accidents of the triangle, right? Its size in relation to something else, its position in relation to something else. They refer to the states of affairs in which the triangle appears, not the essence of the triangle itself. So that essence remains the same. There are certain attributes, certain definitions of the right triangle that are essential to it. Having made this distinction then between essence and accident, and identified what he means by essence, right? These intellectual sort of definitions. He then moves on to think about the essence of God. The essence of God is perfect being that is omniscient and omnipotent, has all of those perfections. And then he says, the essence of God also includes existence. This is a really important argument for Descartes. The essence of God includes his existence. That is to say, if we can imagine this perfect being, then it must exist. If we have the idea of a perfect being, then that perfect being necessarily exists. So Descartes is taking up here a traditional argument for the existence of God, what was called the ontological argument. And the ontological argument went something like this. All good things are attributed to God. Existence is a good thing. Therefore, existence is attributed to God. Right? It's a simple syllogism. Right? All good things belong to God. Existence is a good thing. Therefore, existence belongs to God. Now, what's the problem with this argument? Right? It may not be as ridiculous as it seems to us on the surface, but there's an obvious problem with this argument, namely that its premise, right, its major premise, in a syllogism, you have major premise, minor premise, and then conclusion, just a little bit of ancient logic. So the major premise, right, all good things are possessed by God, belong to God. That premise is deeply problematic because it uh, commits one of the worst logical fallacies. I don't usually like to talk about logical fallacies, but this is a pretty glaring one. And that logical fallacy is that it assumes its conclusion. Your argument can't assume its conclusion. If your conclusion is contained in your premise, then you have no argument at all, right? If I say uh, all unicorns are um, happy, and then I say uh, I, John is a unicorn, the conclusion would be John is happy. Well, that's not exactly assuming your conclusion, but I hopefully you get my point, right? If I say prove the existence of God, and I say, okay, well, in order to prove the existence of God, first we have to understand that um, God is good. Well, it's a bad argument, right? Because we've already assumed the existence of God, and if we assume the existence of God, then our argument is flawed. Uh, so this ontological argument, Descartes sees the problem here, right? That in order to prove the existence of God, you can't begin from the fact that God exists, the fact that God is a being with all good attributes. So Descartes' argument that the essence of God includes existence is going to be a little different because he's not saying that uh, all good things belong to God and existence is a good thing. What he's saying is there is perfection. This is not I don't think, wild premise. What he means by perfection is simply truth. Right? Truth is perfect. A thing that is true is perfectly true. There is such a thing as perfect truth. And if there is perfect truth, as we've said several times now, there must be a perfect cause of that perfect truth. In the experience of a perfect truth, then, one encounters the necessity that there be a perfect being that causes that perfect truth. So that by saying there is perfection, one has already said a perfect being exists, who must necessarily be the cause of all perfection. So this argument that essence includes existence, God's essence includes existence, is really an argument based on causation. That if we encounter something with this perfect essence, then we have to assume it has a cause. And causation is really the key here. Right? Trying to think about, how to say this. Uh, what we get in the triangle, just as in God's existence, is an experience of necessity. Uh, it is necessary that a right triangle's angles add up to 180 degrees. It is necessary that if there is a perfect truth, there must be a perfect being that created it. And that necessity is existence. Existence is necessity. What we see in the truth is the necessity of the truth. It is necessarily true that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and not 5. So it's, I think, a little misleading to say that essence includes existence. And Descartes will clarify this in his objections and replies, as well as in the Principles of Philosophy, where he'll say, really, it's that essence and existence in God are identical. One cannot encounter God's essence without also immediately encountering God's existence. It can't be that we have an idea of God, an idea like God contains all good things, and that from that idea we then speculate about the possible existence of God. Instead, as soon as we have an idea of God, perfection, we immediately know that God exists. Yeah. So this will lead to the ultimate conclusion of the fifth meditation, that all knowledge depends on God. All truth and all knowledge are knowledge of God's existence. On page 71, he writes, "Thus I see plainly that the certainty and truth of all knowledge depends uniquely on my awareness of the true God, to such an extent that I was incapable of perfect knowledge about anything else until I became aware of him. And now it is possible for me to achieve full and certain knowledge of countless matters, both concerning God himself and other things whose nature is intellectual, and also concerning the whole of that corporeal nature, which is the subject matter of pure mathematics." So in picking up the sixth meditation, we'll get deeper into this question of what can be known of the natural world. We already get a hint in this last sentence, right? The subject matter of pure mathematics. What will we be able to have certain perfect knowledge of when it comes to bodies in the external world, when it comes to nature, the physical realm? We'll be able to have certain knowledge of it to the extent that it is the subject matter of pure mathematics. Pure mathematics, whose essence and necessity we grasp with the greatest clarity and distinctness. Okay. So, God's essence is identical to God's existence. We experience necessity as an experience of something independent of us. And we can grasp through these two ideas that all knowledge and all being are unified through God, through truth, uh, and through true understanding. The question will be, what is the extent of our possible understanding? Um, so, in the next and last meditation, Descartes is going to talk about uh, the world as it can be understood by us, uh, and what the sort of boundaries of our reality ought to be. So, I'll do another quick video on the sixth meditation, which will be optional because we are also going to be discussing that in class on Thursday. All right, till then.